we started with rent to rent. I think that's the natural path to go into, especially if you're going into management. But we, like anyone, just Googled how to set up a property business with not that much money, and rent to rent was the first thing that came up. Started learning that, watching endless YouTube videos, and then we just kind of ran with it and just started booking viewings. And I think that's the best way to get these deals, is just get in front of the vendor, direct to vendor, rather than agents, in my opinion. And then just, it's kind of a numbers game. You know, we were doing this during a full-time job, and we had about 8 or 9 rejections from November to the start of December. And then we just had one landlord that gave us a shot.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. And on this week's Property Education Masterclass, we're joined by the amazing Zac Ratcliffe. Now, Zac is another young entrepreneur, an Aussie that moved over to the UK just 5 years ago, and from a complete standing start, along with his partner Eve, has now built a colossal serviced accommodation management business already at over 70 units and very close to acquiring another large management company. Guys, there's a lot packed into this episode. Again, the traits that you need to be a successful entrepreneur, the sacrifices that have been made to build a business like this, the mindset, it's all there, as well as the importance around knowing why you're doing it and what the end vision looks like, having a really clear laser focus on that, which is really refreshing to hear, as well as Zac's understanding about the importance of time, freedom above materialistic things. I absolutely loved this episode. Guys, if you get knowledge from this episode, if this episode inspires you to take the next step and start your own successful service accommodation business, I would urge you to please follow the show and leave us a review. It really, really helps us with our exposure levels. If you've got a question around service accommodation, please do pop it in that review. We'll pull it out and we will give you a shout on the show and answer your question during our midweek episode of the Airbnb Nomads Toolbox. Until then, guys, settle in. This is a fantastic episode and I hope it inspires you to get started. Here we go. Hey, Zac, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Hey, Alex. No, pleasure being here, mate. Pleasure.
Really, really good to have you on. You reached out to me to come on the podcast, gave me a little bit of a synopsis of your story, explosive growth, lots and lots of juicy stuff in there around building a really big, large service accommodation management business that we're going to get into. Also, I really like the fact in how young you are. 26? Is that
yeah,
26,
27.
Yeah, 27. So I've had a run recently of some young entrepreneurs coming on, just doing incredible things. So I'm into that. I like that. I like to promote you guys because it's inspiring to younger people out there, right? That are potentially maybe going down the wrong road or going down a road that they feel society is pushing them down and they're not fulfilled. They're not happy. They know that there's not really any rainbow at the end of that journey. And you guys are showing these young people, other opportunities, other paths, forging your own future, growing your own business. I think it's really, really cool. So you've got a bit of an interesting backstory as well about where you come from. So why don't we start there? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, mate. No, I appreciate that. And so I'm originally Australian. Hopefully people can pick up on the accent. It's fading ever so slightly every year I've been here. So I moved over here in 2019. And so I run this business with my partner and also life partner. And that's basically how I moved over here. I was a turning 21-year-old lad going to Europe from Australia for a lad's trip, shall we say, as we would call it in Australia. I met my partner in a hostel room, and after a couple of days of just
how romantic.
Yeah, exactly. In a hostel room in London. And Eve is from Bristol, and she was up for a festival. And we just hit it off day one, and we were in the same hostel room for the next couple of days, and we just kept hitting it off. She missed her train, delayed it, stayed an extra day, and then we obviously went our separate ways. And I booked a Airbnb in Prague and told her to book a flight. She came over, and I'll try to keep this really quick because it is a long story. But yeah, then we went our separate ways. We were like, crap, what have we done here? And I was then again traveling up to North Europe, and I was in Berlin, and Eve was coming down to France with her family, and somehow convinced her family that drove all the way from Bristol down to Remiremont in South France to come drive 2.5 hours to pick up some random Australian boy that flew after being out until 4 a.m. in Berlin at 10 a.m. to pick me up from Basel Airport. And then I stayed with them for 5 days randomly, only after 2 weeks of me knowing her. And then from there,
That's quite a quick introduction to the family then.
yeah, exactly. And then from there, her parents, which, to this day, basically allowed this relationship to happen, booked her a flight to Australia. And she came back after I arrived. And then we did long distance for 8 months. And then I moved over here. And then the rest is history. Now I'm living in Cardiff, Wales, of all places, from Australia.
I think there's probably quite a few people listening to that thinking, you should have done it the other way. She should have packed up and moved to Australia rather than you moved to Wales.
Yeah, 100%. She was studying at the time. We tried to convince her, but I think the parents had a strict rule of, I think I'm over there if she's studying.
So how is that? How's that transition been? Because
Yeah.
You're a young guy, you're about as far away from your family as you can be. How is that? How's that been for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I've dealt with it really well. I think what helped was I moved over in 2019, and in 2020 we had COVID for 2 years. So it was basically not seeing the family from the other side of the world. When, especially in Melbourne, they were locked down the longest time out of any state country. So I think now, as I'm growing up and my brothers are having babies and getting married, it now makes me miss a little bit more. And obviously my mom's getting older as well. So I'm going back in October. I haven't been back in 2 years, so I can't wait. But yeah, it's a transition. But credit to Eve's family and Eve. Their family's so tight and just welcomed me in and basically treated me like their son. So that made the transition so much easier.
That does help. And yeah, I mean, I can speak from my own experience. I spent many years living over in the Caribbean, which isn't as far from the UK as you are from your home, but still, it was at the best annual trips home, for kind of Christmas and stuff like that, and the rest of the time it was just kind of seeing family on a screen. And since I've kind of made a transition back to Europe and now, spending most of my time in Spain, just having the ability to hop on a flight 2 hours, and you're back with family or for business, it's really the best of both worlds, because obviously you get the lifestyle here, but close enough to also get home when you need to. So,
yeah, true.
So what are you thinking long term? Is it, are you planning to just stay with the UK for now and see how the future unfolds?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is the next couple of years is just really building this business up and then building our portfolio up at the same time. But I've already, every day I journal like my dream day, and it is at the beach, waves crashing, running on the beach, nice car, and then traveling back to the UK for the summertime. And, basically as soon as Christmas is done, get out of the UK and just go to warm weather. Maybe where you are, mate. To be fair, you got a nice tan on right now. I'm a bit jealous.
It's not a bad shout. I mean, there's some beautiful places in Europe. So yeah. Well, it sounds like you're heading in the right direction to get to that dream. So what was your background? What was you doing in Oz before you met Eve and headed over?
So I was a store manager for a suit company, and did that well. So it's basically sales background. And when I moved over here, I landed my job basically helping influencers scale their fitness business online, selling them apps. So I grew up to be head of business for a company. And that's kind of where my business taste came from, because my first mentor, I would call him, and now good mate, he sold that business for a couple of million, and then they merged together. And I just saw that unravel. And I was like, wow, this is a really good way to make good money. So I stuck with that for the next couple of years and did really well, was sales manager. And then Eve talked about property and rent to rent and service accommodation. And initially I was just going to invest in it, but then I got a little bit of the entrepreneur bite as soon as we started
Yeah.
scaling up.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us how it began. I mean, I know that you guys scaled super aggressively.
Mm.
Um, Today in this market, the biggest problem that you hear people talking about who are trying to get into the space is trying to source deals.
Mm.
As it's getting busier, it is hard. So yeah, maybe it'd be good for them to know how you began. How did you begin your business?
Yeah, so we started with rent to rent. I think that's the natural path to go into, especially if you're going into management. But we, like anyone, just Googled how to set up a property business with not that much money, and rent to rent was the first thing that came up. Started learning that, watching endless YouTube videos, and then we just kind of ran with it and just started booking viewings. And I think that's the best way to get these deals is just get in front of the vendor, direct to vendor, rather than agents, in my opinion. And then just it's kind of a numbers game. We were doing this during a full time job, and we had about 8 or 9 rejections from November to the start of December, and then we just had one landlord that gave us a shot. He just said, "Look, I've got 50 applicants. It's very competitive, but there's just something about you guys. I don't know, just that there's something there." And we were professional. We came well dressed. We came on time. We came with information, and then we got our first rent to rent deal. And I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong with what's shown online, where they need to have this perfect deal and it needs to be like 3 months rent free and all this kind of stuff, which it's just not. I don't, in my opinion, it's just not a thing anymore because it's so competitive. And then we had to pay a year rent up front, a bit of a risk, but we took the plunge. We also had to renovate that place ourselves. When I say renovate, paint and do skirting boards. So we would finish work at 6 p.m. and literally work there for 2 weeks straight until 2 to 3 a.m. and actually sleep there as well to get that done because we just put about 16, 17,000 pounds into it, including the rent.
Wow.
But from there, while we were doing that, our first ever viewing came back to us and said, "I've got these 2 properties. Do you want them?" And we were like, "Yep." They're furnished as well. So we took them on. And then within a month, we had none to 3. And then we were live in January, which was a learning curve, to say the least.
So a couple of questions around that, Zach, is, you speak about direct to vendor. Absolutely agree. It's the easiest way, to begin, get that face time, build that relationship with the landlord
Definitely.
directly, cut the agent out. But how did you do that? Obviously, there's various different methods. What was your kind of go-to process for that? Was it networking? Was it open rent?
Yeah, it was open rent for this one. So we both of them were open rent, yeah, and then a bit of networking as well. So we built up a good network in our local area, but funnily enough, the deals didn't come from that. They were coming after, which was great because it kind of stacked up from us doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, open rent was the best place. We tried Gumtree. We just kept getting scammed. Obviously Facebook as well.
A lot of scams. Yeah.
Got scammed.
Facebook. I'm actually surprised if I try and buy something or apply for something on Facebook and it's not a scam. I'm like, oh, nice. It's not a scam. It's not,
happy days.
It's not completely reversed.
Exactly.
It's 99% of people on there are just scamming. But I do what you said about deals harder to come by. Landlords having a lot more power and being able to ask for a lot more and demand a lot more as far as the terms of the deal. 100% agree. And on the courses and in the trainings, they say, oh, you've got to negotiate your rent-free period and, ask for this and ask for that and try not to pay a deposit. And it's like, it all sounds great on paper and it all sounds great when someone's on stage, trying to upsell that person onto the next program. But the truth is, you're right. When you go and see a property, pretty much wherever it is in the UK now, there's going to be 30, 40, maybe 50 other people, that are applying for that property in strong positions that are offering over market rent, that are offering 6 months up front, 12 months up front. So unless you are incredibly good at building relationships and can sell that person and get them on side, the ball's in their court all day long.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
So I
more.
completely agree.
Yeah, and I think as well when you're coming in with this, I would say weird strategy in their eyes. It's not weird. They're
Mm,
just confused. They're like, oh, I just want something simple, basic. I don't want to deal with
yeah.
this. If you start talking about rent free periods, their brain just starts to get frazzled.
If you love to travel like me and you understand the power in escaping the money for time exchange trap, but you just don't know how to do it, then building an Airbnb consultancy business could be exactly what you have been looking for. Right now in the UK, there is a completely untapped opportunity through helping struggling Airbnb hosts by turning around their underperforming properties and generating you huge commission payments in the process. We are going to teach you all of the tools and all of the techniques that we've learned over the last 5 years through building our very own multiple six-figure Airbnb business, arming you with everything that you need to swoop in and save the day. Minimal startup costs, zero risk, and almost unlimited potential. Sound good? Welcome to the Airbnb Consultant. Contact us through any of the channels included in the studio notes to get the conversation started. So what were some of the things, if you can remember back to that point, that you said that you think might have won that landlord over when he or she's got all these other people applying for AST residential contracts? What were some of the main things that made him think, okay, these guys are worth a shot?
Yeah, so we were just upfront. We just said, look, we don't have a property right now, but we've been doing all the trainings. We're educated. We're professional. We're doing this currently in our full time roles, and we want to grow a business with team and scale. And we're not looking just to put this on Airbnb or Booking.com. We want to put professionals, and we're building those connections up. So we just like came in talking like we knew what we were going to be doing, rather than just chucking all these random words out there. And then we just kept following up with him. But he actually got burnt from rent to rent in the past. And I was very surprised when he came back to us. But yeah, he was good to go. And because we said that we were going to improve the property and we had all these
Right.
clauses in there, he was like, cool, I don't have to do it, because he knew that it needed refurbing. So we said, we'll paint it, we'll do this, we'll do that. But just it needs to be 3 years with no break clause. And he was like, yeah, cool, done.
It's frustrating, isn't it? Because, you know how beneficial it is to the landlord. You're going to go in there, you're going to spend money on it, improve it, look after it, keep it in a show home condition, all the rest of it. And, complete contrast to that, myself as a buy-to-let landlord know that, I'll pay for the refurb. I'll spend $5,000, new carpets, new paint, put it out on a AST, and, they leave 12 months later and the place is wrecked. So, there's so much benefits to the landlord, but it's building that trust, isn't it? That's the main thing, which
Definitely.
It sounds like you was able to do. How did you get to the 12 months rent in advance, which again, a lot of people might say, oh, Zach, that's crazy. And that's not what you're meant to do. And it's too much risk. And there is a lot of risk there. Maybe it might not have worked. Again, it all comes down to the due diligence that no doubt you would have done before you took on the deal. But again, in this kind of market, the ball's in their court. So how did that conversation come up?
Yeah, so it was basically thrown at us. He's like, yeah, cool, let's go ahead with this. However, because you're a new company and you're basically trying to get the income to pay the rent, I need 12 months to, one, know you're serious, and two, know you have the capital to maintain it. So I tried to negotiate, but there was no budging. And he's like, I could literally let this out tomorrow if you say no. It's a great sales tactic to me. I was like, all right, well, let's just take the plunge.
He's not bullshitting you.
Yeah, exactly.
He can.
Yeah, he's like, he showed me. He actually sent me a message with the 40 applicants on OpenReach, and I was like, this guy knows his stuff. So yeah, we took the plunge, and we looked at it like, worst case, we break even in a year, but this is now our first property, and then even our two other properties after that. And this is again against the norm, but it's because we had a clear vision of where we wanted to go. We're like, we can do this. So the other ones, which I wouldn't tell anyone to do this if they didn't think they were going to be scaling, it had like a 10% rent increase on the next two. And I just said to Eve, and I was like, look, one of them will work after a year. One of the other ones won't work. However, now we have three. We can just scale crazy with this. And if we just break even from these three, look at it like a investment into a stock, it's going to pay dividends 2 years after that. And that's kind of what we did. So one of them we gave back, and the other one we're going to give back at the end of this year because it's jumped like £300. So I think it's just going outside of what people tell you and just being tactical, and then just using that to your favor to kind of grow your business. And so when I tell people that, they're like, "Well, I would never sign that up." I'm like, "Yeah, you would if you knew you were going to be at 70 properties a year later."
So I guess what I'm hearing is that what you did, whether you knew it or not, which surprisingly most people don't do, is at the very beginning you had a really clear focus on where you was going.
Definitely.
So you knew where you was going. You knew what that journey looked like, what that pathway needed to be, and you was able to start building something from the beginning that was going to get you to your end goal. So, but a lot of people don't do that, right? They just go out, get a property, don't really know kind of what they're doing, what the reason is, what the why is. And it's like, well, let's just kind of see how this goes. And, if you go into it that way, it's really hard to plan, isn't it? Because you don't know where
Definitely.
you're going. The analogy is what is it like steering, being out in a boat without a rudder? So, it's
Yeah.
very, very true. So that's pretty cool. Did you, were you, something else that we see a lot is that people aren't, don't put enough time into, who is their target market and what kind of properties do they need to serve that target market? Is it contractors? Is it corporates? Is it leisure? Is it, did you do much of that? Or did you, because again, coming back
Mm.
to what you said, the market's hard, you kind of take what you can get. So yeah, what were your thoughts around that?
That's a really good question. I would say definitely not at that time. I think the first one was near a beach, so we're like, this is going to be more leisure. But in fact, our first ever booking was contractors, and we're like, oh, okay. So we got that wrong. But then it did turn out to be a lot more leisure after that. And then the other two, they were in central Cardiff, so they were a lot of corporate and leisure guests there. So we thought that was going to be more of a touristy kind of booking. But no, I would 100% say that we did not put any focus into that, and that was just a lapse of like knowledge and importance of like doing that. Now, when we do
Yeah.
set up units, it is top of mind of who this is tailoring. But
Yeah.
definitely, people try to target everyone, and they don't get the results from that.
Yeah, obviously you've learned so much from then to where you are
Yeah,
today, and obviously we'll get into that journey. But so you were still working at this point. Eve was presumably also working
yeah,
when you took on the first handful of units.
yeah.
What period? How did you ask this question the other day on with another guest? Did you say, did you sit down and say, right, here's the number we need to get to, and at that point we can kind of cut our jobs and we can get into this full time? Or was it just, let's see how this thing goes and pull the plug when
Yeah.
we can?
So I'm a lot more of a conservative person, and that was because I was still learning to be an entrepreneur. Because it was Eve's idea, and I was kind of felt like I was going to invest it. So Eve was like bullish, and to her credit, she was the one that pushed that needle forward for her to quit her job, and that was only February. So only 3.5 months after we started, and we did that way earlier. But we were in a bit of a privileged position where I was earning quite a lot of money. So I was pushing with six figures in my job as a sales manager. So it allowed me to fund our life. So at that time, we were basically, I was putting all my wage back into the business and also to our life. So we weren't saving, we're probably eating into our savings. So we took that plunge very early before I would say most people would, because we just had that clear vision. I only actually quit my job about, was it 2 months ago, even with all these units, because to aggressively scale, we were not taking big wage to keep kind of growing.
Mm.
And now we're obviously in a position where we can do that. But also my passion for my job just died when I wanted to work in the business all day. So I could have quit probably about 4 or 5 months ago. But we had a target in mind to be able to be making the same amount of money that we were making in our personal life, so that we could just continue living comfortably rather than just taking a step backwards, because we already did that with Eve to grow that business. So
Mm.
it was interesting. It was stressful, but it worked.
Yeah, no doubt it was stressful. And again, it's I hear it all the time on here. You know, people who are successful, who are building businesses that are working, and it's the same thing. You know, it's the work, the sacrifice. You know, the
Mm.
working through the nights, the forgetting about the weekends. You know, binning off the Netflix, forgetting about the pub. You know, and just being laser focused on what they're trying to achieve. And it's those people and it's those stories. And when you hear it over and over and over again, and then you see other people that say, well, I tried that, but it didn't quite work. And it's like, okay, well, how much time and effort and sacrifice did you really make? Well,
Yeah,
it's still going on holidays and like trying to make it work, but it's like, no, you need to be a certain way. You need to understand the amount of work that this thing is going to take.
definitely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of people have a excuse mentality, and it's drilled into them from society, I think. And unfortunately, everyone wants to blame other people and not look at what they can change and sacrifice sleep, or like you said, Netflix, or just getting up a couple of hours earlier just to start
Mm,
prospecting and then booking in, in their lunch break. But
mm.
everyone has an excuse, unfortunately, these days, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I hear a lot is it's they want immediate results, you know,
Yeah,
and the cold calling agents is a classic example, or they're going to a one networking meeting and well nothing came of that, so that's a waste of time,
so true.
and it's like you've got to accept, if you want to go down the rent to rent road, you might literally spend in this market 6 months. That's not an
Agreed.
overstatement. Six
Yeah.
months every day, calling agents, pounding the streets, going in person, putting out leaflets, networking before you get a deal. And if you're not willing to do that, you're in the wrong business.
Yeah, all go pay source of 3 grand to get it for you,
Yeah. And then, yeah.
which is all a whole
Yeah.
interesting topic.
Yeah, yeah. Sources. There's some good ones, and there's a hell of a lot of bad ones. But
Oh yeah,
it's that's a whole different conversation. So let's move it along. You got a handful of units. You're starting to cut your teeth. You haven't taken any formal education, YouTube, books, podcasts. Google. You kind of start. You're learning as you go. How was that? How was that experience? How was taking payments, guest relations, channel managers, optimizing listings? How did all that go without the
yeah.
mentors or the training at that point?
Yeah, so we did have like a training a little bit, but not much. Something that was just did it like ticked over the box and got us the deal there. But that kind of helped us learn what systems in play really, and then we just adapted from there. So um, I think we use Tokeet and Guest Flow as well, and they're great. They help us like massively. So we got that up early, and then we had some understanding from other business about like processing payments and deposits, so that was really good. That helped quite a lot to like streamline that, and then we took on some more education, and that kind of helped solidify where we our structure. But honestly, like people will talk about being perfect and amazing and they got the best business. It's not true in service accommodation. We're still learning, we're still adapting, we're still getting things right. Even today, what we were doing a year ago, we're not doing now, and what we were doing last
Mhm.
month, we're not doing now. But yeah, it was super interesting starting that in January. Not having that much education in place of what to do was a massive learning curve. And then when we learn a few little nuggets, we end up going from like a 20% occupancy in January to jumping up to 60 and 70% and getting some good bookings to lose, a bit of money, but from where it was looking at the start of January, it was looking real grim. And that's just the power of education. You can't do this by yourself. It's impossible.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point. When people, because social media, right? It's awash with the success stories and the big bookings and the 7-figure service accommodation business, whatever. And completely agree. 99% of it is just clickbait to buy a course. Yes, there's a lot of people that are incredibly knowledgeable and educated with huge portfolios and doing things great, but there's the majority of people, we're all just doing our best. We're doing our best, and we're learning as we go. And every day is a learning day, right?
Definitely.
But that goes for any business. That goes for any business. And the minute that you stop learning and that you think that you know it all and you've got it all cracked and everything's perfect is the day that you start going backwards,
So true.
and
Yeah.
slowing down.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
was in a big company that was worth like 60 million, and they're still changing every single day. They're not getting it
yeah,
perfect. And that's what business is. It's always moving forward.
yeah, yeah. Would you say, Zac, that being younger, being already kind of, from what I can understand, kind of already in the tech space somewhat, did you already have some benefit there around getting the channel managers in your head and systems and processes? Was you already quite familiar and educated on that stuff?
Yeah. I would say so. Eve is very big in operations. She's just savvy with it. I'm more so numbers, talking to people, but we did have that kind of clued up. So we were able to understand business from the start because we were growing that, where we previously worked.
Mm.
We were kind of, he was like operations, I was head of sales. So we had those things in place. But they weren't perfect. And we learned very quickly that we had to adapt to it. And then I think the biggest transition was just from being an employee to a business owner, where everything is your responsibility and managing team and VAs and just constant chaos, which is service accommodation. That is still today a learning process, and we definitely didn't do what we should have done in the early days. But that's just again all part of learning. But yeah, it's the system side of it. We did have a bit of knowledge, but if you don't have knowledge in that, it is crucial to your success, especially scaling.
Yeah, so important. And yeah, one of our biggest bugbears in our coaching business, working with our mentees to build their service accommodation businesses, is that a lot of I'm not saying we're, perfect or the best in the world or whatever, but what we do understand and what we know, and one of the reasons why we moved into the coaching space was to come from a really genuine place of wanting to help people understand and build business.
Yeah.
Because as you just said, a lot of people that get into the SA space, they're mostly coming from an employee background, right? Because it's the lowest barrier of entry financially.
Mm.
you know, People who are moving, for example, into, commercial development, stuff like that, they're normally coming from an already business background where they've had other property businesses, and it's that natural progression. But service accommodation, a lot of people are coming from a job-based role, so they don't know tax, VAT, structure, how to manage their time, systems, processes, all this kind of stuff. So that is massively, massively lacking from the majority of the training courses, which is just, here's how you find a unit, make it look nice, put it on Airbnb, and that's it. That's kind of where it ends. So I completely agree. That's one of the biggest problems. So you went out and you realized that you needed to go and learn this stuff. And that was when
Mm.
you went and found a mentor.
Yeah, correct. So we dabbled, and then we were like growing, and there was a lot of pains, and we're like, okay, we need to have someone. And we still do that today. And I think honestly, like, you can't scale any business without a mentor, let alone service accommodation, which has so many moving parts. Because I remember when we had those 3 units, we got trained on how to get the deal and kind of systemize as well, like on the basics, because that's what you do until you get a proper mentor. And then we're like, okay, what next? It's like a roadblock. We're like, what do we do in this? How do we get bookings? Like, do we
Yeah.
discount? Like, we had no idea. And this is where then, that training came into play, and then instantly, bang, we see results. And that's just where, like, whatever you're paying to your mentor, they should be able to 5x, 10x, 20x that every single time. And that's what people just don't get in their head, where you're
Yes.
investing in yourself. It's not a cost, it's an investment.
Yeah, 100%. But what you just said then is so true. Whoever you're working with, whether you're taking a course, whether you're working one-on-one with a mentor, whatever you're investing, you should always be sure. Obviously, you've got to put in the work, right? No one can
Definitely.
make it happen for you. But as long as you're implementing the steps that they're giving you and the action steps that they're putting in front of you, you should be so confident that you're going to be able to get back that investment and a hell of a lot more, in the
100%.
long term. Which so many people don't. They go and take a course, they spend the money, and it's like, oh, well, that was nice, and then it's back to the job. So
Yeah.
really, really good point. That something else, Zac, that I'm interested in is, you're in the business with Eve, which is amazing. Your life partners, business partners. How would you say that you complement each other within the business? Because, I've said a bunch of times on this podcast that, I'm a big fan of working with others in
Mm.
however that looks, right? Obviously, there's joint venture partnerships, whatever, that's a different thing. But if you're going to be in business with someone full time, yes, you've got to be incredibly sure about that person, trust them, know them, understand that you're going to work well together. But the strengths come where you might feel, yeah, I want to do this, but I know that I'm severely lacking in this area, whatever it might be. Maybe you're not very analytical. Maybe you're not good with numbers. Maybe you've got no confidence speaking to agents, whatever it is. So that's a great time to go out and consider working with someone that can bring those strengths to the business,
Mm.
and you complement each other. And that's how you
Definitely.
can grow. And that can work really, really well. So what is it that you guys each bring to the business, and how are those strengths determined within the business day to day?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a unique situation because we're partners and life partners. So that brings some, difficulties that we've learned through.
Mm,
But so he's got like a photographic memory, very analytical to a task and operation, and loves diving into like Notion and just getting systems and SOPs in place. So I'm very good at managing people and hiring, and so that's her strength, and that was what she used to do at the other job. With myself, I kind of more so, I'd be more the networking, sales, finance, business kind of planning, numbers type of person, but also kind of like dive into a few things. And same with Eve. So we kind of cross over, but we basically just allow each other to do our own kind of regions. So we're not crossing over and kind of treating it like two, managing directors where they have their own departments. So that, because I think even if it's a business partner or partner, if you start to dive into doing everything, nothing gets put forward because you're just clashing heads and then it's a battle. So we kind of complement each other and we do the things that we don't like to do. So Eve's not really, doesn't really enjoy sales, but is good at it, where I love sales. I really don't like SOPs. I really don't like systems. I like to be, you know, giving information, but me to go then do it. I can't do it. It just bores me to death. And that's where we kind of complement each other because you need systems in place, you need sales, and that kind of mashes together.
yeah, absolutely. And are you aware? Do you make are you proactively aware of kind of giving yourself the space away from the business as well to maintain the relationship part of that partnership? Because
Great
I could
question.
see that it could potentially get, you could just get so overwhelmed, right? Living together,
Yeah.
talking business, being in the business. So do
Yeah.
you take the time off to?
Uh, we're working on it. I think we know we try, but it's so when it's grown so fast, it is consciously like we know that it's not perfect and we can do better at it, and we do have like boundaries that we put in place. So this is where we've actually invested into like a performance coach as well that helps us with this. So not just in our business, but also just helping us as better people, better entrepreneurs, growing to our vision, but mainly helping us communicate with each other to separate that. And that's helped massively because it is unique and not everyone can do it. And it definitely has its challenges. But we do have like things like date night on Friday where we don't try to talk about work. We have dinner together. We'll try and do walks where we don't talk about work, but
Mm,
it is difficult. It does prop up, and we do have to kind of check ourselves. And we go into periods like now in summer where we have like a couple of weeks where we're like, crap, we've failed at doing what we're supposed to do, and then we have to kind of go back and do it. And yeah, it's not. I would definitely say to people to have a conversation with their partner and see if they can do it because not everyone can. It is difficult, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
yeah. It's really, really true. And one of my because a lot of people, they love the idea of going down this road, building a service accommodation business, or just building a business in general. When they're in the job, it sounds so appealing, being in charge of your time, being able to scale as big as you want and be in control of how much money you want to make and all this kind of stuff. And yes, there are those benefits, but also all of the additional stress and workload and never really being able to switch off, and knowing that you take that responsibility, away with you when you leave the workplace, and when you're in bed at night, you're thinking about it and all these
Yeah.
kinds of things. And actually, one of my previous guests said something which stuck in my head. He also came, he came from a reasonably well-paying job, not to your level. It wasn't a six-figure income, but he was doing all right. He had all the perks and benefits and bits and pieces. And he said that he's also built a very, large and successful service accommodation business now, moving into the development space. And, he's going on to do big, big things. But he did say that, up till pretty recently, he kind of felt like he'd replace shackles with shackles, because he said, I'm always thinking about it. I can't go away. I've struggled to take any time off. It's all consuming. And I think that's true for a lot of people. So what would you say to people who are really wanting to get into business, who maybe have a slightly unrealistic idea of what it might look like?
Yeah, someone, I think my performance coach talked to me about this, and a lot of people, you don't want to start your own business to then just be a slave to your business, because that's what your 9 to 5 is. So that stuck with me from day one. I was like, I do not want to have that lifestyle. But initially, first year, maybe 2 years, you will be that person. And it is tough and it's hard and it's not for the faint hearted. But if you get through that period and you've built the systems in place, you've invested in a mentor, you've invested in coaches, and you put in the work, you'll get to a point where you'll have that freedom and you won't have those shackles. But you need to build that from the get-go with the end in mind, and not just go, 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 go. You need to build yourself out of the business. And as soon as you do that, then, and I'm not there yet, and that's probably going to be another year away, but we're some parts we are. And when you get to that, that's when you have true freedom. And I'm a real big believer in this. There's no point having financial freedom if you don't have lifestyle freedom. What is the point of the money? It's so pointless.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to have lifestyle, financial, and time freedom are the 3 things. If you lose one, what's the point? If you don't have time, what's the point of having lifestyle and financial freedom?
Yeah.
And then vice versa with all of them.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm I've spoken about it so much on this podcast. What is the point of, just killing yourself for years and years and years trying to achieve materialistic things that you normally never actually get the time to enjoy them, because, you're just working so much. And then when the time does finally come and you've got the time and the freedom to enjoy these things, and you're just too old to really enjoy it. And then you're like, shit, I would just give all of this stuff up to just get back some time, the time I miss with family, the time I miss traveling, the time I miss making experiences and holidays and, all that kind of stuff. So to realize that now at your age is really, really great and refreshing to hear. Because most people don't, and they're getting into it for the wrong reasons, and they're trying to make money without, I was having this conversation the other day about realizing when enough is enough.
Yeah.
Because you end up getting stuck in this, okay, I just need to get to this figure. And then you get to that figure and you think, oh, maybe I'll buy a bigger house. And then you need to get to the next number. And then before you know it, another 10, 15, 20 years have gone by.
Yeah.
So, realizing again comes back to the why, doesn't it? Why are you doing it? What's the end goal?
Yeah.
I'd like to talk, Zac, about, I know that you're up to 70 units that you're managing. How did you grow the business from those those initial handful of units that you took on rent to rent? And when did you think that we need to pivot into management now? Because obviously, you should never have 50, 60, 70 rent to rent units. That would be crazy. So how many rent to rents did you take on before you decided, okay, now it's time to go down the management road?
Yeah. So we realized after 3 properties, and like we spent like 20 grand or whatever it was, because this was another misconception, is that you need no money to get into rent to rent. It's not true. But we then learned about management, and someone was telling us about it. It's explained that you can take a percentage of the gross, not put any money, actually charge them a setup, and then you could scale that. And we're like, oh, sounds pretty good. Let's try that. So we tried that, and then we had a referral for a management deal. It was a 4 bedroom, and it was really good, and it was like £600-700 a month, making us profit. Not profit, but gross. And then we were just like, let's just scale this. We can just really grow this to a true business, because that's what we wanted to grow. And we thought about having 50, 60 rent to rents. And we're like, that's like 80 grand, 90 grand
Mm.
bills. If I go to Mallorca, or if I go on a holiday when I don't want to be working, do I really want that lingering over my head?
Mm.
If 1 month they don't do well and I lose like 60 grand, I'm like, no, I don't want that. So that's when we really grew into management. And the way we did that was really at the start referrals. So we partnered with a few sourcing agents that we liked, and they really liked us, and they're having issues with other management companies, and they started to refer the people that they deal with to us. And then what we ended up doing was we would go to every single networking event, and you hit on this before, nothing would happen for the first 2-3 months, but we kept going, we kept going, we kept going, and now we walk into those rooms and we have about 6 or 7 of our clients in there, because it compounds. So networking has been a massive, massive place where we've grown our business. But it just really started from getting strategic partners, referrals, and then just kind of running with it. And then 3 became 10, 10 became 20, 20 became 30, 40 became 50, and we keep going on, and we're continuing to grow and grow every single month, with the plan to be at 150 by April next year.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite a big business. So, was you nervous, like going down the management road, about having to perform for other people's properties and other people's money, essentially? Was there?
Yeah, it wasn't nerves, because we were pretty confident that we could do really well, and we hit the ground running and got good results. I think there was like lingering stress would be the best way I could explain it. Like, um, I'm not a nervous person, but I do worry if they're not performing. It does like bear on me, and it's almost sometimes worse than your own properties in a way, because you don't want to
Mm.
feel like you're disappointing someone. But it allowed us to kind of grow and have that freedom a little bit more, because we were able to systemize it. Because I feel like rent to rent, when it's your own money, you feel kind of like latched to it because you can't see it fail. Though obviously you can't see management fail, you're able to kind of like look out a little bit more and scale it, because you're learning quicker than what you would with just 2 or 3 units. But I think the main thing is trying not to take on just any deal as well. Try to like have a niche, as we were talking about, what type
Mm.
of properties you want, and then kind of stick with that, because a bad property or a bad owner that you probably shouldn't work with is just going to drain more energy, and that management deal, whatever that's worth, it's not worth it. It just saps the life out of you.
Mm. And how do you manage? What's your opinion on managing landlords' expectations? Because obviously every landlord's going to want thousands of pounds of income, and they want to be booked out every single night. So how do those conversations go, keeping them realistic about?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's harder than ever right now because of the rent increases that have happened, where it's, back maybe 2 years ago, you could yield 50, 60, 70% increase in what they would get on an AST. So now we kind of we say, like, look, you should be making about 20% more than what an AST would be, but you get all these tax benefits. But you've got to remember that it's a 12-month year, and 3 of those months can be really rough. But, the other 6 or whatever, they are really performing. So if you're losing money some months, do not worry. That's normal. You're going to then come to the, busier months or the events, because we have a lot in Cardiff, and you're going to be making 50, 60, 70% more than an AST. So it's going to balance out to that 20%,
Mm.
and just being really transparent with them. But in this market right now, just letting them know that, if we launch in a quieter month, we want to get bookings quite far in advance in this kind of climate. Previously, not to worry. You could get it booked up. Right now, you need to be getting bookings earlier. So we're saying, look, the first month may be slow. Do not worry. We're kind of getting our reviews, getting everything building, and then from there it should be kicking. So it's just being clear. I think if you sell them a dream, you're just going to be enemy number one from day one. They're not going to blame the
Yeah,
market. They're going to blame you straight away.
yeah, for sure. And what do you do about, let's say I come to you, say, Zach, I'd like you to, come over. I'm thinking about maybe using my place for service accommodation, and you come into the property and you immediately see that it needs a fair bit of work in order
Yeah.
to get it up to a good enough standard where you're going to get booked.
Yeah.
How does that conversation go without saying, dude, like this place is a shithole? Like, how do you manage that
Yeah.
conversation?
I think it's just being gentle because you don't know how emotionally attached they are. And I think asking questions before you get to that is really important. Like, what's the goal? Why do you want to do this? What's your position? Just understand if it's, if they're going to be able to afford to do this, because you don't want to be going in and just stressing them that they can't do anything. And if they're giving you indications that, they're willing to invest, they know it's not good. What I do, depending on how bad it is, right now there's a lot of stuff on capital allowance where, if because it's commercial, you can kind of get a lot of the benefit from refurbing it, and then kind of talking them through the benefits of this, and then kind of showing the projections, and then saying, look, if we do this, compared to this, you're going to pay back this refurb or pay back this paint in this time frame. So it's worth doing it. However, I'm not going to push you to do it. This is just what I think. I think it could do really well, but in the current state, as you could expect, guests want a good experience these days. If we're just going to be lower of the pack, then we're going to get lower of the pack results. But if we're standing out, then we're going to get the results that you need to make the money, and then that's when it's going to be beneficial. But just being transparent, like, as it currently stands, we wouldn't take it on because it's not going to perform.
Do you find that most landlords or landladies are happy to invest money into their properties once they've decided that they want to go down the service accommodation road?
I would say it's a mixed bag. I would say some are more willing to invest, and some want to be, pinching pennies because, as you can expect, they're investing some money. So it's just trying to just see, reason with them, and just, convince them, for lack of a better word, on, putting an extra £1,000 or £2,000. If that's going to get 10 to 15 or 20 pounds extra a night, you're going to pay that back in dividends. So you don't want to cheap out on these things here. We can be, tactical in other ways. So I would say, yeah, it's a mixed bag. You'll get the people that don't want to spend that much money, and they'll set up themselves and do it wrong. And then you'll have the other one that will spend too much money, and that's just as bad as not spending his money, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone's different, aren't they? But I do find with a lot of people, they want the world, but they don't want to. They don't want to put their hand in their pocket in order to achieve that.
Definitely.
And sometimes they're a little bit unrealistic about, what they can squeeze out the property.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your thoughts around? Do you think that there's going to be a lot more people that are potentially going to be considering service accommodation, landlords, I mean, with a Labour government and removal of the Section 21 no fault eviction notice and more favour, more power going onto the tenant side? I mean, I'm personally quite terrified being a buy-to-let landlord.
Yeah.
And that, my properties are, in the UK, and they're all up in Manchester, and I live in the south, and I don't necessarily trust, nothing personal, but I don't trust anyone else to manage them. And the yields are really, really good as buy-to-let properties. So I've just left them, and they rent all day long, and the returns are great. But having people in there on ASTs is quite scary now, because it's hard enough already. If someone stops paying rent or they fall behind, it's a rent arrears and all the rest of it. It's almost impossible now to get them out. So I think a lot more landlords might start thinking about, even more so, about getting out of the buy-to-let game.
Yeah, well, people don't realise that this has already happened to Wales for the last year and a half. So if anyone wants to understand where and what's going to happen, just turn to Wales and start speaking to Welsh landlords, because service accommodation in Wales grew the fastest than anywhere in the UK. And it has, in Cardiff, the same amount of units than Birmingham, but it has 1/3 of the population. And that is because the regulations in Wales. So Labour have been in Wales since Margaret Thatcher, I think. They changed, so it's double council tax for service accommodation. It's 252 days with that double council tax. And then what a lot of the landlords did before that was they changed how the contracts worked, and they changed, there's a 6-month notice period. There's no fault eviction. And there was just all these issues, and landlords were selling or going over to SA. And that's partly how we grew quite fast, because we took advantage of that period. So I think England's just about to hit that chain right now. I think it's going to be a flood, and it's going to be a fight to get some properties. And I think rent to rent right now is an appealing option to a lot of landlords because they don't have to deal with tenants. However, we need to keep in mind that's going to bring a lot of competition. So in Cardiff and Swansea, we've seen rates drop 15 to 20%. And it still works with good properties, but it's harder. And this is what happened in Scotland. And 40% of Scottish SA operators dropped off. But now they're hitting 20% increase rates because it just killed the market. So I think right now is in England, if not the best opportunity to get any deals possible. Management, rent to rent, I think it's going to be an absolute flurry that you could capitalize on right now. So if you want to get into rent to rent or you're struggling, right now is like landlords are going to be all over this kind of strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I found myself kind of jumping up and down and screaming at the radio, like running up to the elections when, when Labour were on the radio saying, look at the state of the NHS in England and we'll fix it and we'll turn it around. And I'm like, look at the NHS in Wales. Your guys' waiting lists are like 10 times longer, and you're running the show. So God knows what it's going to be like in England. But oh man, that's partly why I moved to Spain, because it's going to be an absolute shit show.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a joke. We'll try not to get political. I could talk about it for days. Nightmare.
For sure. But yeah, interesting point what you said about potential saturation and stuff like that. And we had, I was on a mentee call last night, and one of our mentees kind of raised that question. And we're of a belief that, and you see it once you've been in property for long enough, you see all the strategies come along and they massively peak and everybody's jumping on the train. It was the same with HMOs. Everyone was doing HMOs, and then licensing came in, Article 4 came in, and and then that started to slow, and then people moved on to service accommodation. And now we're seeing, there's going to be, planning permission coming in pinch point areas and registration schemes and different tax situations, especially now with Labour. And I think that's going to see a lot of people drop out and move on to the next thing. And I think for the people that, stay firm, stay educated, keep up with the times as they're moving, they're doing all of the additional marketing that we need to do now to get booked in a busier market. They're learning about how to build systems and processes and automate and understand the business. And just keep going and keep focused on the one thing, and don't start going around chasing it, every other different kind of shiny penny out there. I think they're the people that will do really, really well in the service accommodation space, no matter how hard it gets, and it's the same with all of these strategies. But you've just got to keep moving forward and adapt with the times, and I think you'll be fine. Zac, I'd like to know your thoughts about, and you kind of touched on it, rent to rent and management. Well, I've got a couple of questions. Rent to rent and SA management is great for cash flow. You can make a lot of money, can build a real nice, genuine business. The drawbacks are you're not building any kind of legacy generational wealth. You're not owning any of these buildings. It's purely a cash flow business. So what is your and Eve's thoughts around, taking it to the next level and getting to a point where you're going to, start to invest this money into generational legacy wealth? What does that look like? Is it property? Is it other investments? Which way are you going to go with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I couldn't agree more. Like, rent to rent is a good cash flow business. It's enabling you to get out of your job and scale and have financial freedom. But that generational wealth comes from then owning the asset. So we've bought our one house already, which we've refurbed. We're actually going to live in there because right now I'm in an apartment, crammed into an office together while we're refurbing our house. So that's our first kind of project to learn how to do it, and it's going absolutely awesome. And we've learned so much doing that, and it's full back to brick extension, so many issues that we've had to overcome. And that's now our game plan, is to start buying and flipping and holding and diversifying our portfolio, kind of like what you've done, with not just having rent to rent or just all Airbnbs, having some buy to lets and all these other kind of stuff, because sometimes it's good not to add to the chaos, just add some tenants in there. Why not? Even though, as we just talked about, that could be a bit chaotic, who knows? So that's going to be our big kind of thing. So we want to really grow that. And, we're currently potentially acquiring another management company at the moment as well. So going down the business purchasing and then buying properties is a big kind of thing that we want to do.
Amazing. Well, sounds like you got some big things in your future for sure. If you're looking at buying other management companies and scaling that way, how do you guys, going back to what my previous guest said about exchanging shackles for shackles, and until recently feeling like he'd massively sacrificed his time, how do
Mm.
you guys manage to switch off with, you know, currently 70 units, all those landlords, with all the big expectations and everything that goes along with an SA business, and now looking to maybe acquire a lot more? How do you, let's say, for example, you want to go away for a proper 2 week holiday and just switch off? Is it possible?
Yeah, I would say right now, definitely. I would say previously, no. We did have the ability to do it, but we've had to change a bit of our systems in place to get that in place. So we have two key people in our business that could run the business if we were to get hit by a bust. We have an operations coordinator and a property manager. So they're two key kind of components of our business that run the day to day, and we're kind of overseeing everything from afar and getting the systems in place. So we've had a few internal changes right now to kind of grow because we want to make sure that we're all one big thing that we talk about is always raising the bar and we're going places together. They're two of our core values. So we want everyone to feel like they're coming a part of that team and that we're not just calling the shots. They have the ability to make decisions. I think it's Steve Jobs that says there's two type of decisions. There's one decision that can be reversible and another one that are irreversible. So all the ones that are reversible, we give them the authority to do that. So then we're not just approving payments or approving these things that don't need to be done. Anything that's going to be, detrimental or we can't reverse, they have to go through us. And they're not that many. So we've kind of got that in place, and we're always hired before we needed to, because too many people grow, quality drops, and they're trying to hire, and then they're just training people to just be, crazy, team members that haven't had full training. So we've always put in and sacrificed a bit of profit to make sure that quality doesn't drop, and that's allowed us to have that ability. And we're going to Australia for a month in October, so that's the other side of the world. So we wouldn't be doing that if we weren't confident that we could kind of have ourselves out of that business and not working when the business is running, because we're not awake.
Mm.
To have that in place. And I think that was, again, the end in mind. We thought about that from day one, to have that business be able to do that, because we don't want it to be a slave to our job anymore. That's kind of what our 9 to 5 was.
Yeah, it just sounds, every time I have conversations with people of your age, and you're just so switched on, and doing everything right, from what you was talking about, reinvesting the money back into the business, and not going out and kind of getting carried away with all of
Yeah.
this cash flow, and being sensible with it, and hiring people before you need them, and understanding that why you're doing it. It's all about being able to get back your time and all this kind of stuff. It's so inspiring to listen and hear that from people that are so young. And because I don't know where that stuff comes from, if it means that it's inherently in you, or if you was just sensible from the beginning, and getting that mentorship that's kind of molded you to think that way, and act that way. But it's really, really cool. And I think it shows that life doesn't have to be such a fucking uphill battle, like, until you're 75. If you
So true.
just, from a reasonably young age, you're like, okay, I know where I want to go. These are the steps I need to take to get there. I know I'm going to have to make some sacrifices in the beginning, but I know it's all going to be worth it. And I just need to stay committed, and, just focus on the one thing. And if you can do that, then, and as long as you just keep moving forward, there's a really good chance that, you're going to be able to live a really good life. Whereas
Yeah.
most people are just like, wake up and they're just like, fuck, I just hate my life. And they drag themselves off to their job that they hate. And,
Yeah,
you know,
it's so true, mate. And I had the other day, I had someone like give me road rage, and I think this is the difference between people. This person like just stopped and just started screaming at me. He's like, "I've had a long day of work. I've been, you cutting, you've pulled into this lane, this," and I was like, "Mate, it's fine. Vent to me. It's all good. Like, I get it. You had a long day of work. You're stressed. It's fine. I'm sorry." And it's just like that person is the epitome of who I do not want to be. Is he hates his job? He's working, he's angry, he's frustrated, he's worked all day. It's like that person could sacrifice a year and then not feel like that for the next 30, 40, 50 years. But other people just get angry and they just be battling the anger of them hating each other and hating their
Mm.
lives. And it's just, it's crazy.
But I think at the root of all of it, Zach, is if you don't believe that you're capable, if you don't have the self-esteem and the levels of self-confidence that you need to
Yeah,
to build anything, then you could be the most capable person. I know loads of people who are so capable if
so
they
true.
just could put themselves out there and say, I know I can do this and take action. But instead, they stay in a job that they don't like or in a life that they aren't happy with, saying, "Well, this is just what I was given." And I don't have the self belief to think that I can do anything better. So I'm just going to stick with this. So
So
you
true.
need
Yeah.
the confidence, I think, above everything. Um, Something else that I'm just sitting here thinking is, I think the story with you and Eve is really, really cool. And the fact that you're doing it together, and it sounds like a kind of perfect movie, to be honest. But do you ever think, like, if you hadn't checked into that shitty hostel that night, um, what would you be doing now, and how different life would be?
Yeah. I mean,
Where do you think you'd be?
I got tingles when you ask me that question because it is crazy that one moment changed the course of my life. I have no idea where I'd be. I was a lost puppy when I was in Australia. I was thinking I was going to go do this career in retail and be like a store manager and then a regional manager. I look back going like, wow, that would have been an awful slave job to
Mm.
say the least. So I think I would have eventually gone into sales and just I don't think I ever would have started my business because credit to Eve, the reason I'm here is because she pushed me to it was her idea. I invested the money and then I just kind of dove into it. And I said many years ago, and this is the mindset shift. Like I said, I'm going to work my job. I'm going to make good money. That's how I'm going to be super rich. Is that typical middle class kind of mindset. And it was only when I started this business and realized the money is when my brain completely turned. And the person I was 2 years ago, I'm just not that person. I'm so different to that person. The mindset, my beliefs, everything is different. And I did a LinkedIn post the other day, like, no one people underestimate how much they can get done in 1 year in property if they just change their mindset. And I look back and I go, wow, like I don't recognize the person I was.
I can't. I mean, just getting to know you on this episode, though, I can't see that you would have just stayed in a job based role. I think you're too ambitious and
Yeah.
too driven for that. Even if you hadn't have met Eve.
Potentially, but I was driven like the energy you see now. I was like that in my job. Like I treated my job like my own business, and that was probably, that's kind of where my drive comes from. Everything I've done, but yeah, who knows? It's crazy what opportunities happen in life changing events from just some random British girl in Platts being in my
It
hostel room
really
has
is.
done.
It really is. And I think that's one of the best things. I've traveled my whole life, and I think that's one of the best things about traveling. And now that I'm older, I find myself like, I have to kick myself because sometimes when I talk to like 16-year-olds
Yeah,
and, we're chatting. Then after a couple of minutes, I find myself like, you got to get a backpack on, you got to go travel the world. And that's where opportunities are and doors open and you meet people. And
yeah,
then I have to kick myself and be like, stop preaching. But it's so true. Like when I was traveling, I got jobs, like big paying jobs, purely by, like I was working in a bar and this guy used to come in every single day and sit at the bar, and got to know him. And he was the project manager on a huge gas pipeline site up
wow,
in Northern Australia. And it's not like the UK and Australia. Those guys are earning
crazy money. Yeah,
ridiculous money. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come and I'm the project manager. I call the shots." And he hired me, and I was a trades assistant. I was just sweeping up and cleaning up tools, but I was making like $70,000-$80,000 a year. Just as this punk kid just traveling around, and that obviously would never have happened in the traditional method. So I would push anyone to get out there and travel. And you're a
so true.
prime example of what can happen. So as we kind of get close to the end here, Zach, just a couple of last questions. Is what's the you've kind of touched on it, but maybe a little bit more clarity around what's the end game here? What's the vision? What does that look like? How long is it going to take in your mind to get there? Because I think, again, just like a lot of people don't have a clear idea of why they're doing it at the beginning. A lot of people don't really think
Mm.
about the end and what they want it to look like. So, what's your perfect vision that you're manifesting with your diary?
Yeah, so it's that being on that beach with no stress, with kids, with Eve, driving a nice car, and just the waves crashing. I don't know. It's something about that. It's probably my inner Australian, being in a warm environment. But for that to happen, we have goals set in place for the next 5-10 years. So we want to have 150 units by next April, and that's going to be a really good sweet spot for us where that can systemize us and enable us to be stepping out of that business, having that business in place, a general manager to really take over, and then really start building up our property portfolio. So getting into developments, getting into flips, and diversifying us. So how we're going to get that 150 is really now expanding into England massively, with this news, with the rent uh, bill or whatever they call. They've changed it so many times I can't remember it. Bristol in the south west is a really big area that we're going to be growing and looking to expand because we've got some good connections with production companies looking for big bookings. So that's a big push. And then kind of. After that, it's just having monetary targets for what we want to hit. We're really ambitious. I don't see myself slowing down. I think who you see right now is in 5 years same person, just kind of trying to grow and grow and grow and grow. But I think that's going to be through a lot of owning our own properties and building and buying blocks and that kind of that work. So that's the next 5 year plan. And as you know, all it takes is one random person to be in a room with you that changes your
Absolutely.
trajectory. So open to change, but that's kind of what we're focusing on. And whatever opportunity comes, it kind of run with it or run away from it.
Yeah, yeah, and that all comes down to putting yourself in those positions of opportunity, doesn't it? By putting yourself
Definitely.
out there and letting everybody know what you're doing. We one of the biggest things that I do working with our mentees is they come on, they say, oh, I've got this book in and done that, got a new unit, and I'm like, great. Who knows about that? Well,
Yeah.
no one. Like, you need to be screaming that shit from the rooftops all over your social media, telling everyone in the
So true.
networking events, all of your successes and all of your failures. Be genuine, be authentic, but also scream about your wins as well, because otherwise, nobody knows who you are, what you're doing.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
true. I think that was one thing that we regret is not documenting that journey from the get go because I know so many people would have loved that and been motivated by it, but also it could have brought business.
sure.
And that's what we're going to start. That's a big thing is getting to social media in the next couple of months as well.
Yeah.
Really hammering that in.
Yeah, it's so inspiring for others, to follow along, especially being young and doing so much, So I definitely say that would advocate for that.
Yeah.
And just lastly, Zac, as we finish up here, it's been an amazing episode. So much good stuff in there, so inspiring for people listening. I'd just like to ask my guests at the end just to be a little bit open, a little bit vulnerable, if it's okay with you, just around mental health. Business is a stressful game. Like I said, you wake up with it, you go to bed with it. It's always there. Alongside all of that business pressures, there's relationships, there's family, there's sacrifices. You being on the other side of the world
Mhm.
all the time, and when you throw into that mix, social media, screens, comparing yourself to everyone all the time, never believing that you're doing enough, achieving enough. How is it for you and potentially Eve? How's your mental health? How are you feeling day to day? You happy? Do you have kind of hard moments maybe by yourself or together?
Mm.
Yeah, just overall, how are you feeling?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think business is a lonely place sometimes when you first start. The first little bit of the years, you lose friends, you distance yourself, you sacrifice a lot of things, and no one understands it. And you then go a year in, you're like, oh crap, like I don't really do much besides business, and that can kind of drain on you. So, part of why we invest in this performance coach is that we're not perfect, and I think even when we communicate, even I together, there's so much stuff that we can work on. So for myself, yeah, I'm a happy person. I think stress definitely, like that's top of mind. I went to the Cairo the other day, and they said I was global, which is a word of your whole nervous system's out of whack. And I was like, oh, I feel fine. He's like, do you feel a bit sluggish, waking up a bit, like tired? I'm like, yeah. It's like, yeah, you're stressed. I'm like, oh yeah. But I think the problem is I'm not very tapped in with my emotions as probably a guy with trauma from, a young age when I lost my dad at 13. So I think that is, we're not, guys are a bit different. We're not very aware of what's going on. We kind of get stressed, and we kind of outburst it. And that's something that I'm working on. So there's definitely a lot of things that business teaches you, and you need to work on your emotional state because that's only going to make you better. So I think with Eve as well, yeah, I think girls have it much harder than guys in this day and age. There's so much crap on social media and fakeness and everything. And I think, Eve deals with it really well coming from a social media background. But it's just balancing that kind of male and female energy, especially in business. And it's very interesting when you're business owners together, balancing that, because you kind of blend it together as business partners, and you need to get that male female balance. And that's something that we're really trying to work on right now, because I'm a big believer in like traditional beliefs, like the male taking care of the female. But when you're 50-50 in a business and the money's the same, it kind of gets a bit blurred. So it's trying to kind of fake it till you make it in that kind of way of like paying for stuff. But, I'll always make sure I pay, I'll open the door, that kind of thing, to like balance it out. So yeah, I think, mental health's never perfect, but I think if you're getting into business or you're in business, I think it's just to accept that you need help and invest in coaches, invest in performance coaches, and you're only going to get better. And that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah. Amazing. Good stuff, mate. Lastly, is there anything that you're looking for, any opportunities that you can, or that you're looking to present to people listening at home, might want to reach out and get in touch with you? What are you looking to do? Any help that you need?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is we're looking to expand in England. So if anyone is looking for management, especially in the Southwest, then by all means reach out. We're going to be starting a different podcast, which is basically just about learning about property investment. So we're bringing on big kind of guests. So we've got Property Phil's CEO coming on. We've got other finance people, where people that are maybe business owners or have got a successful rent-to-rent business or whatever, and they just now want to invest into buy to lets or flipping. We're just learning all these different strategies at the same time when we're bringing these experts in. So we're learning, our guests will learn. So we're going to start doing that and growing that, which is going to be super exciting. So I can't wait to be asking questions and learning at the same time and having the other people, because I feel like there's not much out there that's focusing on that investment. It's more like they're trying to push their agenda, or they're trying to become by their course. And I think stuff like this is fantastic, where we're just talking about how to grow a business. I want to have that in our kind of journey and allow people to see us kind of grow during that time as well.
Cool. Sounds good. I look forward to the launch. Definitely tune in. So guys, anyone looking for management in England, specifically, you said, Zach, was it Bristol, the Southwest?
Yeah, Bristol is a main big area, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, reach out to Zach, and we'll put all of Zach's information in the show notes, all of his social media handles, if you've got any, or at least they're coming. I
got some.
You got some. Okay, but definitely email and contact info. So yeah, reach out to Zach if you want to have a conversation around, potentially helping you make more money for less work with your buy-to-let properties in the southwest of England. And Zach, I'd just like to thank you for coming on the show. Really, really inspiring, doing so much at such a young age and so much in front of you, and potentially acquiring, more management companies and growing the whole thing with Eve, I think is really, really cool. And I definitely look forward to following along on your journey and seeing how things unravel. And maybe I'll see you on that beach one day and you can give me a lift home in your fancy car.
Nice one, mate. It's been great being here.
Cool. Appreciate it. And guys, thanks for everybody listening and watching at home. And until next week, we'll see you then on another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. Until then, take care. Goodbye.